better understanding who are the consumers, like going into that panel insight. What are the actual demographics of, a certain age group that is the most likely to buy my product? And is it because it's a household of 4 people or a household of 2 people? That insight's really valuable. And then the other question they're coming to us for is, who's my online shopper? Because what's interesting is your online shopper is different than your in-store shopper.
Welcome to the Marketing Rapport, a podcast created for and by marketing professionals who seek to better understand their consumers and design unique, personalized experiences that stand out in today's market. In each episode, hosts from Verisk Marketing Solutions connect you to industry thought leaders, practitioners, and experts focused on improving B2C experiences through powerful data-driven insights. It's about how we connect with our consumers and where we can partner together to do it better. This is the Marketing Rapport.
Welcome, everybody, to the Marketing Rapport podcast. I'm Tim Finnigan, and I head up product marketing for Verisk Marketing Solutions, where we look at powers personalization through the who, what, where. It's all about data and data-driven insights. Why I'm excited about our guest today is that when I look back the mission of the Marketing Report, all about bringing thought leaders and subject matter experts in to talk about how the listener can better understand consumers and also create and design better personalized experiences through data-driven insight. And on today's podcast, we've got Andrew Criezis, who has the SVP of strategy and product and a little bit of everything at Nielsen, but also has been chief product officer at a division of Nielsen Visor, has some experience at GE. But what I'm really interested in is that Andrew has been part of building some of the most innovative product and data platforms. We're going to get into that. Welcome to the podcast, Andrew.
Thanks for having me, Tim. Excited to be here.
Great. So, Andrew, I know some of your background is in engineering, data science, business, and you can do a little bit of selling. That seems like a very unique. Give us a little what are you working on and you're most responsible for, right?
Yeah. So at NielsenIQ, I lead our global emerging business. So think of that as everything in emerging brands, startups, all the way to growth and mid-market businesses. That could be $1 billion in size within the CPG industry. So what that means is I have accountability for both sales as well as strategy. And that feeds all of our strategy for product, feeds our input strategy for marketing. The focus there is how can we support and enable brands in a way that they've never been able to in the past with data, analytics, and services. So I've had a lot of focus in the US. That's what we've been going deep on recently, but I just actually got this global piece too. So I'm excited to kind of take this mission around CPG and emerging brands and take it global.
Awesome. So Andrew, Nielsen, they are really good at completing the view of the consumer, correct? And they do measurement and they do profiling. Could you just give us a little elevator pitch on Nielsen?
Yeah. So NielsenIQ is a fantastic company that goes really deep into consumers. So what that means is we measure both the retail store. So think every time you go to a grocery store, every time you go to a convenience store, we're measuring all of that data of what products are being sold across the register. And we're aggregating that up into a retail measurement service. And then what we do is we provide also analytics on top of it. So we help and work with brands to identify, what are their market share, what are their sales, what are the pricing, promotion activity, and support their growth. And the second piece of it is that we also aggregate not just what's going to the retail stores, but also what's online. And so we call that the full view. So the full view of the consumer. So what's taking place, whether it's Amazon, whether it's something that's being through Instacart, you name it, we're giving that total complete view of market share and then understand the consumer. So not just the what was purchased, but the why. Who's buying at the end of the day? What are the demographics? What are the age groups? What are the income levels? It's so important to have that. So NielsenIQ is really uniquely positioned to deliver that, again, not just in the US, but globally and about 80 plus markets.
That's very interesting. So tell me, as you're describing, one of the things that I think of is not only personalization, but privacy. Where does privacy come in there? Because it seems like that's the really big buzzword with, some of the TCPA and all the different things that are coming through. I know as a business, Verisk Marketing Solutions, we're constantly, like, what's the balance between personalization and privacy? What's your point of view on that? Or what's Nielsen's trying to accomplish?
Yeah, no, so it's actually, I think it actually makes a company like Nielsen, more important in this space because we do have all the privacy considerations when it comes to panels. So when you think about personal data and panels, right, we have household panels in the US, 100,000 households that are, fully codified, no personal information is given out, but we're able to pull up unique attributes and extend it, extrapolate it against the population of the US and do it in a way that doesn't identify the individual, right? So we're following all the guidelines as well as from a European standpoint, which obviously, as you know, is significantly more strict. And I think what happens is when you don't have a curated panel, you don't come to a company like a NielsenIQ that has online panels or household panels. There's a lot more, call it backdoor ways to get personal information. And at the core of us, that's not what we're about. We are very upfront with anyone that we're working with. They're part of the, panels on purpose, and they're open to kind of sharing data. And then it's fully anonymized, right? So all the data is going into more of an algorithm behind the scenes, and then it's being tabulated in code. So one, I think having guidelines, right? Having standards like there are in Europe and elsewhere, but also having companies that can centralize this and follow procedures and have a quality standard is important for then the rest of the industry to be able to take advantage of that. Because it's not just about, okay, is data out there on a personal level, but it's how is it being used and consumed, and where along like that supply chain of personal data is it being altered or changed, and then what's it being used for. Now, obviously, I think there's a level of personalization that happens sometimes with advertising that can be, pretty extreme, but there's also a certain amount of, I think, populace who, wants to opt in, right? Just wants to have, if you can give me products, CPG products, give me, ads or experiences that are more relevant to me. People are like, give me that. I'd rather have that than something random. So I think it's almost, you get this split. At the end of the day, the raw data, having that standardized, having that following procedures and companies that actually care about it and give a quality standard to it and report on it. That's the key. Otherwise it can be, misused.
So Andrew, when you talk about retail and CPG, what do you think if you could look out 10 years from now, the future? Because it seems like when we're during the pandemic and people were, and they're continuing to order online, but it seems like I've seen some of these pop-up stores, but more experience level stores where it's got less product, but there's more of an experience in there. Are you guys seeing that, or what trends are you seeing that people should be aware of that are going forward?
Yeah.
Retail stores.
Yeah. So I think the overall is that, the trend of omni is not going to stop. So the omni sales, what's taking place, buying online, buying on Instacart, whatever it might be, and having something delivered to you, picking it up, or going in store, and that variability between the two. So, one day maybe you want to go shopping in store and want to check out some produce. Another day you want to pull something online. It's that total omni, that's going to continue to grow, especially that online percent of that omni. That trend we're seeing is just taking off. Obviously, COVID was the instigator in a big way, going from 10% shift. But the experience piece is interesting. It's kind of like, I think of it as like the mini version of an IKEA, right? Like you come into it and it's like, how do you trap people in this experience? Because people want to get out of the house. And I think that's the opposite effect of COVID. So COVID was stay in the house, right? Shop online, expose people to online sales. But at the same time, people now want to be back out in society. So I do think there's going to be more of these, what I'll call hyper local boutiques. There's a shift in the consumer that is really valuing local. So local products sourced locally, things that are more sustainable from local farming, things like that. So I do think there's going to be smaller store formats focusing on local products that are playing into this more of those like lifestyle trends. But that online is not going to slow down. That is just going to grow and grow and grow. And I think at the end of the day, local's only going to be able to supply so much. That online is just going to take over a large majority share.
There's a lot to unpack there, Andrew. And I said I wasn't going to use any business lingo. Maybe post edit, we can take out me saying unpacking. But I think you're right. I love some of your points, like with IKEA and people want to get out of the house and go shopping. And you do want those experiences, but you also want that personalized experience too. And I love what you were saying about local is that, a couple of my daughters that's all not that they want to be local. It's more, they want to be that sort of the health. And there is a ton of new brands they aren't worried about as far as the old brands, or if you think of, Johnson John, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're willing to take an influencer's word for it, or if they see it somewhere and they'll try it and they'll keep on using it. Is that, what are you seeing with measurement, things like that, or experiences like that?
Yeah, the health and wellness piece is huge. We've seen double and triple digit growth in a lot of these things. So when we look at attributes and products, whether it's, free from certain ingredients, right? Clean labels, like I mentioned, sustainability, different packaging approaches that are simple, hitting on like the Gen Z and Gen X, those are growing massively. And I think we're going to continue to see that grow. I also think that consumers are looking for, we actually did a study. It's around, I think 47% of consumers are actually looking at small brands as a preferred purchase path, which is interesting. You've got a certain percent of individuals who want large brands because it means, like you said, it's nostalgic, it's secure, it's the same thing they've been having for 20 years. But a larger share is now shifting to wanting to try small brands because they think it's healthier for them. They think it's, fewer ingredients, it's less toxic, whatever it might be, or it's something new and innovative, because a lot of the small brands are the ones innovating, right? They're listening to the wellness needs. Your daughter's an example. They want a different drink that's going to give them some probiotic, benefit, or a different, lotion or something like that might be cleaner for them. So those small brands are innovating incredibly fast. There's 50,000 plus brands in the US that are, on that emerging scale, which gives you an idea of just how massive the number of SKUs and products that are coming out every year. So I think that trend is growing. We're seeing it in the numbers. We're seeing a lot of innovation around it, and we're seeing consumers demanding more of it. And I think where that trend is going is, initially there was a big push around natural, right? So everything being labeled as natural, that started to get a little bit washed out in a way because everything started to get labeled as natural. Natural doesn't necessarily mean it's better for
like everything gluten free.
Right. So I think, consumers are aware of that. They've caught on to it after a couple of years. And so they're starting to understand, well, everything just because it's natural is good. In the same way that plant-based is definitely an important step, but not everything plant-based is necessarily better for you. And so they're getting more specific, right? Really understanding what ingredients are, what they mean. And then if you have founders or influencers who become the microphone, and you get it on Instagram or you get it on TikTok or wherever it might be, that's just a channel. That's another lever. And, you could be shopping now on TikTok. You can be shopping pretty much anywhere. So people are more willing to trust reviews and trust others than they are just to trust the history of a product.
So Andrew, you mentioned influencers, and I think this is a really important piece is when you have a brand, what are some of the things that those brands are asking you guys? What's the most important thing? Is it, hey, how do we measure brand versus influencers? How do we measure brand versus, just how people feel about us? What are is there any squishy things that brands are asking you for that you're like, oh, yeah, we have that.
Yeah. So there's a lot that brands, come to NielsenIQ for. Obviously there's an influence piece. I'll get to that in a minute. But the first and foremost is just understanding what's going on from a market share standpoint. Who are my competitors? What's taking place from a brand? If, I've got my brand, I've got these 5 competitors. What are they doing, right? What's selling in the marketplace? What are the comparisons? How am I doing in specific geographies, regions, or certain retailers, as well as online, right? Where are these competitors coming from? And also what's unique products? And by unique, I mean all those attributes we're just talking about, which competitors are free from certain, toxic ingredients or free from certain allergens that you can't have. All of those ingredients and components become really important. The second aspect would be better understanding who are the consumers, going into that panel insight. What are the actual demographics of, a certain age group that is the most likely to buy my product? And is it because it's a household of 4 people or a household of 2 people? That insight's really valuable. And then the other question they're coming to us for is, who's my online shopper? Because what's interesting is your online shopper is different than your in-store shopper. And those demographics and how you want to market or advertise to them is significantly different. So those are some of the common ones. And then when it comes to, I think, the influencer piece, I think it's also understanding, and we don't do this a huge amount on NielsenIQ as the media, measurement. That was more the Nielsen side. But it's am I getting the lift off these influencer campaigns, right? So if I'm going to go spend 20,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 on an influencer, what's the lift and what's the impact that I'm getting? And then is that localized to where that influencer is, or is it national? Is it global? And so that level of measurement, I think, is more important. And you are seeing a lot of brands, not just getting influencers, but you're seeing influencers start brands too. Then you're seeing also, famous people, whether they're famous from TV and from movies, also starting CPG brands. And that's just a megaphone, but it's also because they're passionate about wellness, or they're passionate about sustainability, or, you name the key wellness initiative.
Yeah. I found this isn't a wellness initiative. But if another celebrity starts a tequila brand, I think they're saturated.
Right.
So Andrew, in the intro, I talked about how you design some innovative platform. I think this is the perfect time for you to touch on your work at Visor and how that, like, what your mission was there and how it folded into Nielsen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the genesis of Visor was, we actually spun off kind of an incubator within NielsenIQ. And the mission there was, how do we create a company that's meant for startups and emerging brands? How do we create something that gives access in a way that genuinely democratizes data and analytics? Because when you look at the CPG space, a lot of data analytics was meant for the largest CPG brand in the country or globally, right? You couldn't afford it. It was too complex. You name it, right? Hard to use the tools, a lot of CPG lingo. So in Visor, what we did is we simplified and created a platform from the ground up. The idea is make it intuitive, make it so that your mother or grandmother could use a BI tool, essentially a front end tool, get insights about what's going on in tequila, right? Or why is this tequila, selling more than that tequila, and what's the pricing and the promotional strategy? So we created a platform from the ground up. We didn't use anything legacy. We did it in connection with startup brands. So we had an incubator group of about 10 trailblazers, helped us iterate, created this analytics and retail platform. And then we finally shifted the model. I wanted to change the game. With the world of CPG is very much a place where every single retailer, every single channel, every single view that you have to kind of get nickel and dime for. And so small brands can't afford that. And so we created an open retail model where emerging brands get access to everything. And so the idea there was, you're an emerging brand, you're a startup. You really need to be able to, chart your path to growth. Where are you going to go? What is the, if I sell into this region versus that region or that retailer? So we shifted the model on its head, created an open concept of retail, which is the first ever in the market that's taken off. And then we also wanted to build in, like, hey, if you were to hire Andrew for 20 hours, what could he do for you? So we wanted to put an analyst in the pocket. And so we built the whole set of algorithms and analytics capabilities that actually give you direct recommendation. So what to price your product, what promotional levels are. If you went to this retailer, what would be the value of that assortment and distribution? So the idea, again, simplify, democratize data, and do in a way that opens up access to brands who could never have it before, but also give them consumer insight. So it's not just the retail, right? Because that's the what of, where it's being sold, what happened. But we also, looped in our consumer data so that you can, for the first time ever as a startup, get insights, loyalty in the category, loyalty in brands, if you have coverage. So ultimately that took off. We built a platform in a record pace, 6 months, 9 months, and we've been iterating every 2 weeks. So the pace of development is amazing. And the industry has just given some fantastic feedback, whether it's consultants, associations we partner with. Yeah, as I went around, I'm about to go to Expo West next week, which is a big CPG conference. When I went there last year, the first response I got from a lot of people was, hey, I know Nielsen. Yeah, you're for the big guys. You're way too expensive. Like we can't afford you. I said, I haven't heard of Visor because this is meant for you. And I think, when I go this year, it's a totally different story.
That's great. Thanks for explaining that. And a couple thoughts is that with these brands, doesn't matter the size of it, focus on the smaller guy, the startup. And I mean, they're charged with the same thing, acquiring new business, retaining their ones they want, and growing the ones they have. And if you look at one of the things that we did a study that shows that one of the things, or a couple of things that they're missing, why they have trouble doing these marketing strategies or, trying to acquire customers, is of data, internal knowledge gaps. And I think that's great that you're giving them, the analysis or almost the access to a data scientist that they may not have on staff, that you're helping them do that. So, and the other thing that, and I think this is an inherent problem with, I'm painting with a broad brush in undergraduate and even grad school, is that in marketing classes, they're always focused on the big brands. Oh, let's do a project on Budweiser.
Right.
What hasn't already been done? I think having more heat and light on the SMB or the, medium enterprise, as well as even B2B, and helping them and giving them the tools to succeed, is you're going to have, build a long-term relationship with that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's the strategy, right? It's to grow. Like we built that into our pricing methodology or our subscription methodology is we want to provide access and help these brands genuinely grow and democratize that data. And then as they grow, we'll grow with it. And so I think that's a positive for Nielsen, but it's hugely positive for the industry.
So Andrew, let's pivot on a couple of things maybe that you're concerned about. So like, as your current role, what are you paying attention to in the future? So if you think of challenges or road bumps that are going to come up.
Yeah, the CPG does not have its shortage of challenges. So I felt like every call was on for a year was supply chain, right? That was the big one. And then it became inflation, right? We've been living with that. I think that's going to continue to be a challenge for the industry. It's just a lot of brands I talk to is, they're on their fourth round of pricing increases. Now, are they going to take a fifth? Are they going to take a sixth? So that is a really tough decision. Also, they're deciding, where do they want to be in the price ladder? Do you want to be a price premium or do you want to be cheap? So you have all those options when inflation is high. We haven't been in that before. So I think that's going to continue to be one. The second thing that I think is coming up when I look forward, aside from inflation, when does it back away more, which it's starting to do, but is this, I mentioned before around sustainability. It is a trend that is growing as I talk to more industry veterans, influencers within the industry, celebrity influencers, but influencers, that is becoming something that I think consumers are going to get and are becoming more educated on. It has not yet gone prolific across the categories in total store. There's only 50 or 100 categories that really are focusing on sustainability or looking at regenerative agriculture in a significant way. But those are really big challenges that I think CPG is going to start to take on because when you think about it, they have a massive influence. CPG as a whole is a huge business globally. The consumption of products, the shipping of products, the packaging, how we're making products, whether it's animals or plants, et cetera, has a huge impact on the world and the better for segment, us as individuals. So I think those are the bigger challenges that CPG is taking on. And it's interesting because consumers are they're asking for brands to take those things on. And obviously when you go back to the examples of hey, they're listening to an influencer, those are the megaphones, but the reality is they're connecting to a mission or a lifestyle that is along that approach, whether it's wellness or sustainability. From now stepping out of a B2C, more B2B, when I look at the industry, it's a really interesting time to be in CPG. There's a ton of consolidation amongst NielsenIQ's competitors. And so what you see is competitors like IRI and Spins and others, Kantar, and there's a lot of consolidation with private equity behind the scenes. So Kantar has been bought by private equity, purchased Numerator. IRI has purchased NPD. So it's all of these kind of, juggernauts beginning to form, which is really interesting on kind of the fight for data, right? It's like a fight for who has the best data in the industry. What's the highest quality? Who has the most omni data, which NielsenIQ has made some huge investments and is leading the way. But it is this interesting dynamic, and it's going to be really fun to see how this plays out in the next 5 years. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of deep wallets, there's a lot of brilliant technology out there, there's a lot of great data sets, and the data sets are only getting richer, right? More and more consumers, more apps, and more ways to shop, and so there's more fragmentation. So I think that the landscape competition is going to continue to heat up. It's going to be fun to see because there's always going to be new data sets, and it's going to be which ones are what I call investment grade worthy, which ones are you truly going to measure your market share on, and which ones are maybe going to be something that fizzles out. But it's going to be a good fight over the next week.
Well, yeah, and what you just said hits home because Veris Analytics bought Futor Data where I'm from, and they bought Jornaya Data, and they combined this Veris Marketing Solutions to get a better data set. And as a side note, we're not competitors. We actually work together. Well, we work together. But what you said when you were talking about sustainability, I think that when you look at a retail brand or a clothing brand like Patagonia, where they are strictly, this is what we stand for, this is our mission, this is our core value, and this is how we support it. Even their brand image on the Instagram, they're not trying to sell anything, they're selling an image. Is that harder for a CPG where it's more, I don't know. I don't know if you can go to Instagram and advertise yogurt in the same way that outdoor brand. What are some insights that you guys are seeing, best way to handle that or to market that sustainability?
You're going to get some yogurt targeted advertising after this.
Just by saying the word yogurt?
Yeah. Watch out. Yeah, I think surprisingly, brands are building incredible online followings. What I've started to see is brands actually become influencers online. And that's such a core part of their product and I'll give a company that I work with and actually an individual I interviewed, Midday Squares. They make this chocolate brand and they want to be the biggest chocolate brand in the world, but they're building an incredible following. They're doing fantastic. They're selling like crazy, but how they're doing is unique. They are, leading with different attributes that are really important, right? And so if you pick a sustainability brand, you can lead with that and you can create a big following on social media. And, Patagonia obviously has the history, has the depth of their mission from day one. And I feel like that mission is what set them apart and then created a following where, they can sell products at a certain price point. They don't need to overmarket themselves because it speaks for itself on what that sustainable mission is and how they don't want you to just rinse and repeat clothes. I think the same concept applies for products, right? There's a lot of brands who start with the mission first, then they build a product around that mission versus just, I'm trying to build a product, make a bunch of money, and then let's throw in a mission, right? To make it look good on paper. And then I think products are challenged with the fact, similar concept though, which is like, how do you produce the ingredients in a way that's better for the environment? How do you think about the farming if there's an animal component to it that's, better for cruelty free? How do you think about the packaging? That's a big one. Like consumers actually care more about the packaging. The packaging doesn't have the biggest impact from a sustainability or environmental standpoint, but consumers really care. So they want to know that that package can be recycled, that it can be consumed. It was built from, recycled ingredient. I think that's just going to continue to grow. And I think it's interesting. Like in my world, you kind of see these hyper cool brands become big based on their mission and story. And they're using those platforms to share why sustainability or a wellness claim is at the center.
I agree with everything you're saying. I mean, it would be cast if we were arguing about everything. What I want and there's a balance there, right? So you've got this cool brand, it's sustainability, all the stuff you just said. But if they order it through Amazon, there's a whole different, seem like they lose some of their identity
Control
by doing that control, right?
Yeah. And that's a tough balance for brands. I think it's, everyone wants to and kind of needs to be on Amazon is the reality, but it's what percent of your business do you want to have it on Amazon? I think that's that element of control. Obviously D2C gives you the most control, but I think most brands have figured out they need some engagement with Amazon or some of the big retailers to get the product out there. And then what's the impact on your environmental strategy, right? As a result.
It's such a fine line and delicate when you've got, like you were talking about, that chocolate company has got a good runway. It's sustainability. Things are going good. And I think it makes me think back to another brand, Kodiak Cakes, where it was just making pancake. Mm-hmm. And then, and it stood for a lot of things. I love that this guy started out of his backyard, not his backyard, but his garage. Then it seems like it got too big, too many products, supply chain came into issue. So it's like, where's that balance of getting too big, or like Lemonade Insurance, where they were just renters insurance and they put the whole insurance industry on its head, but now they're doing everything regular
else.
insurance. So
yeah.
The delicate balance. So again, I'm going to shift. I've got a couple more topics I want to make sure that you're able to touch base on. When you look at your background, and I talked about you went to undergrad at Tufts and got it was a mechanical engineering. Yeah. And then you also have a data science background. Then you got your MBA in business. And as you can tell from just talking to you, you're a great seller. As a side note, you did sell me when you were younger to clean my minivan. You and your brother said you were going to detail it. The customer experience wasn't very good. Your salesmanship was really, but when you look at all that, what are some of the skills either in that or outside of that are necessary for, let's say, a young person coming into, say, the data industry, whatever industry? What's that skill set that you're looking for when you talk to someone that's looking to either move jobs or start a career?
Yeah. I think there's a few things. One, just given where the industry is going, a depth of understanding around data is invaluable. So understanding not just how you can use data, but the limitations. So for me, it was getting experience with a master's in data science to understand, not because I was going to be the coder and actually go develop lots of models left and right, But as I was, continuing my career, I knew as an executive, I wanted to have the ability to understand what can it not do? Whether I'm looking at businesses or I'm supporting brands, like what are those limitations? So having a depth of understanding, whether that's a little bit of coding background and maybe some databasing background, highly valuable. Now you can get that in a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to be from a standard data science or from a master's of science, but having experience with that, whether you're self-taught or you've gone to a formal program, either one is completely fine. And then I think the second thing is being able to have knowledge of or have a strategic and business mindset. So those are the two things I'm looking for. It's kind of the balance of the two. And it's oftentimes I talk about, there's a book, I'm blanking on it, but they call it the purple people, right? So it's like blue is, the extreme of like data. And then you've got like red, which is more the business side. And it's actually between the two where those are really critical resources. So if you're thinking about yourself from a career standpoint, you're starting out, maybe you've started on the business side or you get an econ major or a business major or a marketing major, but it's also how do you go deeper on the data side? You don't need to be the data scientist, but you've got to be able to translate, have a conversation with that side because the magic happens in the middle. It's important to know each aspect, but the magic happens in the middle. And then likewise, if you start on the data side, be willing to take some experiences, jump into a role, challenge yourself jumping into a marketing role. Maybe you started as a data person, but challenge yourself to go into marketing, even if that's not your long-term vision or mission. By having that experience in marketing and then going back into the data side, it's incredibly useful, and likewise the opposite. So for me, my advice to those starting out is one, jump in first off, pick an area to be, but don't stay in that vertical, go wide and don't worry so much about that first job. It's important to have a good company. The actual role is less critical because it's really your second or third role that's going to be really critical as far as defining your career path. But know that you're getting into a company or an industry that is going to be value add, that's going to give you multiple experiences. And then it's that multiple experiences that's going to get you on your path to where you want to be.
A great point. Here's my little PSA for getting into a company too. Nothing wrong with starting your career as a salesperson because that's how I started my career. And then I transitioned to marketing and I had a little caveat or like people looked at me and said, oh, we'll listen to him because he carried a bag. That's what we call it. Yeah. So I thought that's a really good point. And for my last question, and I already know the answer, but I know you have a strong point of view on what you think the biggest thing businesses can do to affect the bottom line. Because I've seen you in a couple of articles talk about that. So if you could just give us, the listeners, what you think on how you can best affect the bottom line in your business.
Yeah, I think the biggest one, again, it's not the obvious one, but it's something that's just lurking under the surface that we all experience, is alignment. At the end of the day, the alignment across your functions is going to have the biggest impact on how successful and how much of a difference you can make in the bottom line. And I mean that alignment across marketing, sales, product, and tech, because each group oftentimes is structured in a company where they're completely siloed. And that's the reality, unfortunately. You don't have many that are kind of combined under a leader or have a lot of collaboration. And so in theory, right, how it should work is that, each is kind of speaking to the other and there's kind of a process and a chain. The reality and the need is much more real time. And what we found out is that when you look at the alignment in organization, the cadences between those different business units is so different. And so, I've spent time in product. The cadence around quarterly PI planning, leases, is totally different than the pace of marketing campaigns that could be very specific to multi-month, multi-quarter, multi-year, marketing campaigns, which is then at odds with the sales, strategy of just immediate. I got to close this deal. I'm trying to hit the week. I'm trying to get myself paid. Right. And so at the same time, you've got product releases, you've got salespeople pushing. And so that alignment from a cadence standpoint is critical. And for me, it's getting everyone on that same rhythm. Being able to understand what product changes do we need to make, which therefore is how much money do we want to invest in what we're doing, right? So that's hitting your bottom line on your costs and your expenses. How much people do we want to put into this resources? Do we need more individuals on the marketing side? How much are we spending on advertising, events, right? Campaigns, strategy online? That alignment is essentially how you kick off the flywheel. And I think if you don't have the elements of your flywheel correct and in balance across those major key functions, either that flywheel is not going to be moving fast or it's just getting bigger and bigger, but it's not actually moving, right? So you're spending more and your bottom line is getting hit. When it gets spinning fast, that's when I think you really start to feel the benefit of the bottom line. But it's hard to do. It took me about a year to do this correctly in my business within the US. And we finally got that motion underway and we got things clicking and we got very cross-functional. And we saw the impact. We saw fantastic margin improvement, development, incredible efficiency, cloud cost. We saw greater sales, revenue go up, all of that, and more effective marketing. So yeah, to me, that's how you can drive a big.
Yeah, I agree. It's like you hear so much about customer feedback loop, customer experience. Just as important is the employee experience and employee feedback loop amongst teams.
Yep.
So I agree with you. Well, I think we've covered a lot today. We've done trends, we've done Nielsen, we've done small, medium enterprises, what skills it'll take to succeed, current role, current functions, challenges, and then we ended with alignment. So Andrew, I do want to tell you, I'm really happy that you were able to join this podcast.
Love being here.
Totally respect what you're doing and excited to see going to happen in the future. So maybe we'll get you on in a year from now and see what
sounds good. Let's do a check-in. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Andrew. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Marketing Report. This show is brought to you by Verisk Marketing Solutions, an organization created to help CMOs and their partners improve the reach, timing, relevance, and compliance of every consumer engagement. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to the Marketing Report wherever you get your podcasts and check out the show notes for more information.